The hospital smelled like bleach, coffee, and exhaustion. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Nurse Emily Carter pushed the medication cart down the corridor. Her scrubs wrinkled, her hair tied in a messy bun. It was 6 a.m., the start of another 12-hour shift. She loved her job, or at least she used to. Lately, it just felt like survival. As she reached room 214, a voice echoed down the hallway. Cold, sharp, commanding. Who authorized this medication change? Emily froze. She knew that voice, Dr. Ryan Hale, the new attending physician everyone whispered about. Harvard-trained, genius-level IQ, and according to every nurse who'd worked under him, impossible to please. He was standing at the nurse's station, white coat spotless, stethoscope perfectly placed, eyes locked on a chart in his hand. "Dr. Hale," Emily said carefully, walking over. "That was me." The patient's blood pressure dropped overnight. "I adjusted." "You adjusted?" he interrupted, looking up slowly. His gray-blue eyes narrowed. "Are you a cardiologist, Nurse Carter?" "No, sir," she said, trying to keep her tone professional. "But I've been monitoring Mr. Larson all night. The adjustment was minor." "I didn't ask for your justification," he snapped. "You overstepped your authority." Again. Heads turned. Other nurses paused mid-task. Emily felt her face burn. "Sir, I followed protocol." "Protocol doesn't mean improvisation. You nurses think you can play doctor because you've seen a few cases. But this is a hospital, not a classroom. Next time you decide to adjust, remember your place." Silence hung heavy in the air. Ryan turned and walked off without waiting for her response. Emily stood there, stunned. Her place. 2 words that hit harder than she expected. Behind the counter, another nurse muttered, "Don't take it personally. That's just how he talks." But she did take it personally, because she wasn't just another nurse. She'd spent years earning her degree, pulling double shifts, studying case studies on her breaks, and saving patients that arrogant doctors sometimes gave up on. Later that morning, she saw Ryan again during rounds. He didn't even look at her when he gave orders. "Vitals every hour. No changes without my approval." She nodded silently. When he left the room, the elderly patient, Mr. Larson, whispered, "That man needs a lesson in humility." Emily smiled faintly. "He's brilliant, sir. Just not easy to work with." The old man chuckled weakly. "There's a difference between being smart and being kind, dear." She checked his 4-line, pretending not to think about it, but she couldn't shake the sting. That night, she sat alone in the empty cafeteria, staring at her cold coffee. She had dedicated her entire life to this job, to helping people heal. But lately, she felt invisible. She remembered her mother's voice, a nurse before her. "Never let anyone make you feel small for caring." Emily sighed and closed her eyes. "I'm trying, Mom." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. What she didn't know was that the man who humiliated her today would be the one begging for her help tomorrow. 3 days later, the hospital was chaos. A multi-car accident had just come in from the freeway. 5 critical patients, 2 code blues, and 1 trauma surgeon barking orders louder than the alarms. Nurse Emily Carter moved through the madness with calm precision. She cleaned wounds, checked IVs, stabilized vitals. Her hands steady even as her heart raced. Every second mattered. In the corner of the ER, she spotted Dr. Ryan Hale, commanding the trauma team with his usual sharp tone. "Get me suction. Where's my CT report? Move, people." He was brilliant, yes, but his arrogance turned teamwork into tension. At one point, a young intern froze, unable to intubate a patient under pressure. Ryan snatched the tube, did it himself, and muttered, "This is why I hate working with amateurs." Emily heard it. Everyone did. Same old Ryan Hale, flawless hands, frozen heart. Hours passed. The chaos began to settle. Emily went to the supply room to restock when she heard a loud crash outside. Then shouting. She rushed out, just in time to see a stretcher being wheeled in through the ambulance bay. Blood on the sheet, a broken limb, oxygen mask. The paramedic yelled, "Male, mid-30s, car rollover, head trauma." Responsive but fading, Emily ran alongside the gurney, then froze. The man on the stretcher wasn't just anyone. It was Dr. Ryan Hale. His face was pale, blood dripping from his temple. His once perfect hands were trembling, one arm twisted awkwardly under the sling. His voice cracked through the oxygen mask. What happened to the driver?" "You were the only one in the car, doctor," the paramedic said. The nurses exchanged shocked looks. Emily's heart pounded. For a second, she forgot everything he'd said to her. The humiliation, the cold stares, the condescending tone. Right now, he was just a patient, broken and afraid. She snapped back into gear. "We need vitals, stat. Get a crash cart ready." As they rolled him into Trauma 3, Ryan's eyes fluttered open. Through the blur of blood and light, he saw Emily leaning over him. Her voice calm, professional, unshaken. "Stay with me, doctor. You're going to be okay." He tried to speak, but the pain silenced him. His world went black. Hours later, when he woke, the room was dim and quiet. His head ached, his chest burned, and his left leg was immobilized in a cast. He tried to sit up, but a soft voice stopped him. "Easy there. You took quite a hit." He turned his head. It was Emily. Chart in hand, hair loose now, exhaustion under her eyes but steady as ever. "You're my nurse?" he rasped. She looked at him evenly. "For now, yes." He swallowed. "Figures. The one person in this hospital who probably hates me gets to take care of me." Emily's tone was calm, but her words cut sharp. "Don't flatter yourself, doctor. I take care of everyone, even the ones who don't think I should." Ryan tried to smirk, but the pain stopped him. "Touché." She checked his foreline, adjusted his oxygen, then made a note on the monitor. "You fractured 2 ribs, dislocated your shoulder, mild concussion. You'll be here at least a week." He sighed. "A week? I have a conference in New York." "Not anymore," she said, turning away. Ryan lay there, the weight of helplessness pressing harder than the pain itself. For the first time in his career, he wasn't in control. He wasn't the one giving orders, he was the one receiving them. And every time Emily walked into his room, calm, professional, untouchable, it reminded him just how fragile power really was. Late that night, as the hospital grew quiet, Ryan stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His reflection shimmered faintly in the dark window. Bandaged, bruised, and humbled. He whispered to himself, "Guess we all end up on the other side eventually." And just outside the door, Emily paused, hearing the words. For the first time, she saw not arrogance, but a man finally realizing what pain feels like. Ryan Hale had always believed control was the cure to chaos. Schedules, precision, authority. But lying in that hospital bed, arm bound, ribs aching, pride cracked, he finally understood what real helplessness felt like. And every morning it was Emily Carter who reminded him. She entered quietly, her scrubs crisp, her movements efficient but gentle, checking vitals, changing dressings, retaping 4 lines. No unnecessary words, just professionalism wrapped in calm. At first he couldn't meet her eyes. The memory of his own voice, "Remember your place," echoed louder than the heart monitor. "Pain level?" she asked on the second day. 7, he muttered. She wrote it down. "That's progress. You were at 9 yesterday. I've had worse." "I'm sure," she said, adjusting the monitor. "But you don't have to prove anything right now." Her tone wasn't soft. It was balanced, steady, like someone who'd seen too many people pretend to be stronger than they were. On the 3rd morning, she walked in with a tray. Breakfast, oatmeal, fruit, black coffee. Doctor's orders. He grimaced. Whose doctor? Mine, she said with a hint of a smile. Eat. You'll heal faster. He looked at her, really looked. There was warmth behind that calm exterior. A quiet confidence that came from knowing how to keep people alive. He'd mistaken it for defiance before. Now it looked like strength. Why do you still take care of me? He asked suddenly. Because that's my job, she said, handing him the spoon. No, I mean after what I said. Emily hesitated. Because your words didn't change who I am. They just showed me who you were. He nodded slowly, shame washing over him. You know, he said after a pause, I wasn't always like that. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? He chuckled softly, then winced at the pain. I used to be decent, maybe even kind. Then residency happened. Everyone competing. No room for weakness. Emily folded his blanket neatly. There's a difference between strength and cruelty, doctor. Some people confuse the two. He looked down. Yeah, I did. For the first time, the walls between them began to crack. Conversations grew longer, less guarded. He asked about her shift hours, her family, how long she'd been at the hospital. 8 years, she said one night, sitting by the window while he rested. My mom was a nurse too. She died when I was finishing school. I kept going because of her. She'd be proud, Ryan said softly. Emily smiled faintly. She'd probably tell me to stop skipping lunch breaks. They both laughed. Quietly, awkwardly, honestly. Days passed. His recovery was slow but steady. The arrogance faded. Humility filled the space it left behind. One afternoon, a code blue rang down the hall. Emily dropped the chart and sprinted out, instincts faster than thought. Ryan watched through the doorway, the nurse he once dismissed now leading the resuscitation with flawless focus. 2 milligrams AP now. Keep compression steady. She brought the patient back. Her hands trembled afterward, but she didn't let it show. When she returned to check on him later, he said quietly, You saved that man. She shrugged. Team effort. No, he said. You led it. You were incredible. Emily blinked, caught off guard. Coming from you, that almost sounds like respect. It is, he said. And it's long overdue. That night, after the floor went quiet, Emily adjusted his blanket one last time before heading home. Ryan looked up at her and said, You ever think people end up where they do for a reason? She smiled. You mean fate? Maybe. Or karma. Emily paused at the door. If it is karma, then maybe it's just giving you a chance to be better. He watched her leave, the soft click of the door echoing in the still room. For the first time in years, Ryan Hale, the man who thought he knew everything, whispered a prayer he hadn't said since childhood. Thank you for sending her. It was supposed to be a routine evening. Ryan's vitals were stable, his color returning, his sarcasm slowly resurfacing. The nurses joked he'd be discharged in a week. Even Emily started believing it. But fate never asks for permission. Just after 10 p.m., alarms erupted in room 216. Ryan's monitor spiked, then flatlined for half a second before jumping erratically. Emily sprinted in, instincts taking over. Code blue, room 216, she shouted. 2 nurses rushed in with the crash cart. Heart arrhythmia, the resident yelled. We're losing him. Emily grabbed the paddles, her hands steady but her throat dry. Charged to 200. Charged. She looked down at his pale face, the man who once told her to remember her place. Now his life was literally in her hands. Clear. The jolt lifted his body. No response. Again. 250. Clear. Beep. Beep. A faint rhythm returned. Everyone exhaled except Emily. She stayed beside him, counting breaths, monitoring the weak pulse. His lips trembled, whispering something barely audible. Don't let me die like this. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she kept her voice calm. "You're not dying on my shift, doctor. Not a chance." For the next 2 hours, she didn't leave his side. She adjusted his oxygen, monitored every fluctuation, whispered words no patient ever hears from her. "You're going to make it through this. You're stronger than you think." When the cardiologist arrived, he shook his head in disbelief. "If you hadn't been here, Nurse Carter, we'd be signing his chart, not stabilizing it." She didn't respond. She just looked at Ryan, pale but breathing, and whispered, "Guess I broke protocol again." The next morning, when Ryan opened his eyes, sunlight was pouring through the blinds. Emily was there, sitting by his bed, exhaustion etched into her face. "You stayed," he rasped. "I didn't trust anyone else to keep you alive," she said softly. He tried to smile. "You really don't know how to follow orders, do you?" She laughed quietly, but the sound trembled. "I'm starting to think you were the lesson I was supposed to learn." He blinked. "And what lesson is that?" "That sometimes the person who breaks you is also the one who teaches you how to heal." Ryan swallowed hard. "Then what lesson did I teach you?" She looked at him. Not with anger, not with pity, but with a calm he didn't deserve. "That pride doesn't save lives. People do." Silence filled the room, the kind that feels heavy with things unsaid. Ryan turned his gaze to the window. "When I'm out of here, I want to be different." Emily crossed her arms, skeptical. "Different how?" "Less perfect. More human." She smiled faintly. "Start with an apology. That's always a good first step." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Emily, I'm sorry. For everything I said, and everything I didn't see." Her voice softened. "Apology accepted, doctor. But don't tell me, show me." 3 days later, word spread through the hospital. Dr. Ryan Hale was being discharged. Staff gathered in the hallway as he slowly made his way toward the elevator. Arm in a sling, smile uncertain, humility glowing brighter than any white coat. Before he left, he stopped by the nurse's station where Emily was charting. "Hey, Nurse Carter?" She looked up. "Yes, doctor." He smiled faintly. "Thank you for saving my life. Twice." "Just doing my job," she said. But there was warmth in her tone now. He nodded. "I used to think being a doctor meant never needing anyone. Turns out I was wrong." "You're learning," she teased. "That's progress." As he stepped into the elevator, their eyes met one last time. No pride, no hierarchy, just quiet understanding. And somewhere deep inside, both knew their story wasn't over yet. Because some lessons don't end in hospitals. They begin there. 2 months later, the hospital lobby looked brighter than usual. New posters on the walls, a fresh coat of paint. And for the first time in years, the staff were smiling, really smiling. Nurse Emily Carter walked through the corridor, clipboard in hand, as a patient stopped her near the nurse's station. "You look tired," the woman said kindly. Emily smiled. Occupational hazard. But the truth was, she wasn't tired. She was at peace. Since that night in room 216, something had changed inside her. She'd saved hundreds of patients before, but this one had been different. This one had forced her to confront something she never wanted to face. That sometimes you have to heal the same kind of pain that hurt you. That afternoon, the hospital board gathered in the main conference hall. It was a small celebration, a new policy launch. The nurses lined up in the back, watching as the chief administrator took the stage. "Today," he said proudly, "we introduce a new initiative, the Carter Hale Training Program, designed to bridge the gap between doctors and nurses through empathy and collaboration." Emily froze. Her name, next to Hale. She turned toward the front row, and there he was. Dr. Ryan Hale, walking with a cane but standing taller than ever. He wore no white coat this time, just a simple gray suit, sleeves rolled, humility in his eyes. When he reached the podium, the room fell silent. "6 weeks ago," he began, "I was lying in a hospital bed, angry, broken, and arrogant enough to think I was untouchable. He paused, glancing at Emily. I insulted the very people who keep this place alive. The nurses who notice the small things, who fix the mistakes others overlook. The ones who hold your hand when no one else does. A murmur spread through the crowd, quiet, emotional. He continued, voice trembling slightly. One of those nurses saved my life. Not because she had to, but because compassion isn't a job for her. It's who she is. She taught me something no textbook ever could. That healing isn't just medicine. It's humanity. Emily's eyes stung as she looked down. Ryan smiled softly. This program is our way of making sure that lesson lives on. From now on, every resident who trains here will work side by side with nurses, not above them. Because the future of medicine isn't hierarchy. It's harmony. The audience applauded, not polite claps, but heartfelt ones. Even the senior doctors stood. When the applause faded, Ryan stepped down and walked toward her. The crowd parted silently, watching. Hey, Nurse Carter, he said quietly, stopping in front of her. You didn't tell me humility could be this exhausting. She laughed, shaking her head. You'll survive. He extended a small envelope. This belongs to you. She frowned, opening it. Inside was a photograph. The two of them, candid, taken by another nurse the night he was discharged. On the back were 3 handwritten words. Thank you, teacher. Her throat tightened. You didn't have to. I did, he said softly. Because you were the first person who ever treated me like a patient, not a title. And maybe that's exactly what I needed. For a long moment they just stood there, the doctor who'd once belittled her, and the nurse who'd saved him. 2 people connected by pain, changed by grace. Take care of yourself, doctor, she said finally. He smiled. I will. But if I ever end up back here, she interrupted, grinning. Don't worry. I'll still be the one giving orders. They both laughed, softly, sincerely. Ryan turned to leave, cane tapping gently against the polished floor. Before he reached the exit, he stopped and looked back one last time. Emily. She looked up. Thank you. For saving more than my life. Her smile was small but full of peace. You're welcome. Later that evening, as the sun poured gold through the hospital windows, Emily stood by the same room where it all began. Room 216. The beeping monitors, the faint smell of disinfectant, the echoes of that night. She whispered to herself, sometimes the lesson isn't in what we do wrong, but in what we're brave enough to fix. Outside, the sky glowed warm, a new kind of light, and somewhere beyond those walls, a once arrogant doctor walked into the world a little wiser, a little kinder, because of one nurse who refused to stop caring.